Why do you want to follow the list of subjects that public school teaches while you homeschool? We all can do it. We pull our kids out of public school and we say, okay, we're going to do something different because homeschool is a different approach. But then we end up wanting to know what they're teaching in public school. I did it. So, what I'm going to do today, by the time the video is ended, is I'm going to share 3 points you can take away. A lot better method in what to know when it comes to teaching your child, what skills, how do we pick and choose the subjects. And hopefully, this will empower you to teach and homeschool to your unique children, which is the first reason why we do this anyway. Now, I just want to get one thing clear before I go forward. I don't bash public school, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I want you to know where I clearly stand. I am a homeschool advocate, strong believer in homeschool. I've homeschooled my kids, all of them from the beginning through high school. They're in college, they're young adults. I'm still mentoring Mr. Munchkin. He's now kindergarten, first grade. It's so much fun doing the younger grades. But the point is, I have so many tips to share with you, and I want you to stick with me to the end of the video. Also, if you're watching this, I'm a friendly person. I like knowing who you are and where you hail from. So if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, just drop a comment and tell me where you're from. And let me tell you who I am. My name is Tina Robertson. I've homeschooled well over 20 years. My site is Tina's Dynamic Homeschool Plus. I know it's a long name, but I had a lot of things going on in my head when I named my site. I am the creator of the 7-step do-it-yourself homeschool planner, which is very popular. I walk you through 7 steps of creating your own planner. Also have created many unit studies, lap books, a free student planner, and I have many courses, online self-paced courses for homeschoolers so that you stay in the know. That's enough about me. This is about you. So like I explained before, I want to give you some tips, and I have them written down here on the side because I always have a lot to say. I'll try to keep myself reined in and not get sidetracked, but I don't make any promises. Okay, so here's the first point that I want you to understand when it comes to teaching your child, because it really makes a difference in importance, or a strong foundation is the point I'm trying to make. So the first point I want you to know, and how do we cover these subjects, when, where, what age? The first thing to know is there is a difference between the types of subjects. Now you're like, how's that going to help me? Well, it's going to help you because you need to realize how much freedom you really do have. No, you're not going to mess your child up. And I promise if you do, I've done it, you can go back quickly and change something, get caught up. It's not like public school where we have to wait a whole year, we have to wait on the rest of the kids. Change immediately. If there's something you didn't do last month, do it this month. We don't have to wait a year. I'm not even going to say do it next year. Do it now. If you feel like you're behind on something, put everything aside and go ahead and focus on it. So the first point is there's 2 types of subjects. All subjects fall into these 2 areas. All of them. It's that easy. And there's content subjects and there's skill subjects. Now, the difference between the 2 is that one area, the skill subject, it's more important that you focus on building it in a sequential manner. The other area, content, it really doesn't matter when you cover these subjects. Now, let me talk about content subjects first, because I want to give you an example. Because even in public school, when it comes to covering a content subject, which some examples would be history, geography, science, art, music. You see, that covers a lot of subjects. One school district, even in the same city, might cover the Civil War in third grade. Another one may not cover the American Civil War to the fifth grade or sixth grade. So I don't want you to get caught up in thinking, oh, in third grade, because my district teaches the capitals, we have to teach our kids the capitals. I didn't. My kids didn't even know the capitals of the states until about sixth or seventh grade because it really didn't matter to me. I figured they could learn that while we were here. I focused on ancient history because I stepped away from the way public school had laid out which grade this kid's supposed to know what subject. Okay, so can you see in a content subject, it really doesn't matter if you study a topic, the rainforest, photosynthesis in third grade or sixth grade. Sure, it matters how deep you will go into the subject. Obviously, a kindergartner, you're not going to explain what that is as opposed to perhaps a sixth grader. I'm not talking about the depth. I'm just talking about laying out the scope. What to teach when. Okay, so it's not really important that with a content subject, a child knows a skill, a previous skill. Now, the skill subjects. When I first started homeschooling, I would classify them as the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But the longer I've homeschooled and the more that I favor the unit study approach, it's hard for me to even say language arts is part of the skill subjects. Right now, math, I feel, is really just about the only skill subject. Now, what is a skill subject? What's the difference? What makes the difference between the content subject? Well, a skill subject, it's important that it is covered in a particular sequence, like I explained earlier. For example, before a child can understand addition, it's important in the earlier grades to know the value of a number when he sees it, whether visually or non-visually, whether they do it in their mind. A lot of kids just do math in their minds. That's okay, as long as they understand the abstract part of it. Now, would you go ahead and start introducing multiplication or division? Would you start breaking down sets or groups of numbers when a child doesn't even know what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 is, or even the value of it? See, that's the difference between the two types of subject. The skill subjects are so foundational, you do want to do them in some kind of order to where they build on top of each other. The foundation, then you build other concepts. Then as they get older, then it's pre-algebra, algebra, calculus, and then on to college, they have a solid foundation for math. Spelling is another one of those that could probably fall under skill subject. It's kind of hard to teach a child how to spell when they don't know the letter for k, k, k. What letter represents that sound? Or t, t, t. So even teaching our children the alphabet, I didn't focus so much on the alphabet in the younger grades. I just focused on the sound when we saw them, what sound was tied to that symbol. That's what I focused more on. And then we learned the letters of the alphabet naturally with all of my sons as I taught each one of them how to read and write. Okay, but can you see spelling could probably fall into that too, especially if you have a struggling speller. It'll probably fall into that. We really need to teach this in some kind of sequence, some kind of order. That's the difference between the skill and the content subjects. Subjects that have to be taught in order versus subjects that don't have to be taught in order. If your children want to learn about the birds, teach them about the birds. You know, if they want to learn about the dinosaurs, teach them about the dinosaurs. Whatever grade level, it doesn't matter. And the beauty with content subjects, I'm flipping back and forth between the two. The beauty with content subjects is that since it's not grade level, you can teach until your child's delight is satisfied. And if you have real ambitious learners and they're just really grasping all the information because it's a topic they really love, there's no third or fifth or sixth grade. On the rainforest, there's no third, fourth, or sixth grade on water or the oceans or fall or summer or winter. Just teach to their heart's delight. You're not going to miss any concept. And here's the difference between the two subjects. The reason why math and language arts is considered the skill subjects is that if you don't teach them some of the foundational things, then they can suffer with a handicap later in life. We want them to read well, write well. That's why those subjects are foundational. Now, once you know that, to me, that helps you a lot better with planning. You can release over your head these things you think, oh, I have to do this obligation, I have to teach this subject here. You don't, you really don't. And homeschooling's a lot easier than people make it out to be, because sometimes when they talk to me, because I do tutoring, and they'll say, Tina, I have 17 subjects. I'm like, whoa, I'm not sure if I'd want to do homeschool either. That's way too many subjects. Scale those subjects back. Homeschool's a lot easier than that. Okay, so that's how we can tell the difference. So now, when we have the skill and content subjects, then the next question is, which one do you think we should focus first on when we're spending our dollars for the year? That's right. It's absolutely important to find the skill subject, math or language arts, that's a lot better fit for where our child is, regardless of the grade. And if you're going to purchase a content subject curriculum, I encourage you to purchase a grade or two up from what your children are. That saves you a lot of money because you can use it for a year or two. Okay. Now, let me move on to the second way that I said the second point I want to share with you when it comes to picking school subjects, and that is use a developmental approach. A lot of schools are getting away from this, and the educational world is so touted. This is what a kid has to know in this grade. This is what a kid has to know in this grade. It is so stressful. Besides the fact, it's unreal. They have lost all love of learning. Children love to learn naturally if we just tap into that. This forcing them to learn something at a certain grade when they're not ready does not work. And I'm here to tell you, it can bite. Through the years, I've seen many parents ambitious, I'll just use the word ambitious, who were real, our kids are going to know this in this grade, and we're going to know this in this grade, and we're going to go back to public school. And as adults, that relationship with their kids strained. Relationships are everything. I'm not saying you have to have one or the other. You can have a high standard of academics and that relationship through the developmental approach. And developmental approach means you're waiting on the child. Learning and developmental, they kind of go hand in hand. Sometimes you'll hear educators say, well, we need to lay out the atmosphere for them, and then that stimulates the cognitive. That's true. That's true. They work together. I don't think one's more important than the other. But I do know this. That children's fine motor skills, their hands are not equipped to hold a pencil. They're just not. That's called development. Develop means you work with their body's natural rhythm when they're ready to learn. You know, I often think about new moms when they're like, oh, my baby's not crawling yet. How old are they? Oh, 6 weeks. And you're thinking, whoa, they're going to get there. All kids get to that stage of crawling. There's a certain time period and they're going to crawl. Learning is the same way. That's the developmental approach. If they're not ready, you can still offer them a subject, offer a higher level, see where they're at. I was constantly waffling back and forth between 2 grade levels when it came to math, because I'm like, I think they're ready for a higher level, but I don't want to push them. So that's the developmental approach. And how do you know? The developmental approach is one-to-one tutoring. That means you're homeschooling, you're with your child every day. You'll know what they know because you teach them every day. You're with them. You'll say, I thought they learned this in public school. I have so many parents tell me that when they start homeschooling. I thought they knew this in this grade. Well, they didn't. They didn't catch it. It's okay to go back and review. That's how mastery is really learned for a child. That's how he really gets to have a higher intellect, is when he repeats some of the same things over and over until he feels like, hey, I've got this. And then he's ready to move on because he's full of confidence and he still loves learning. So it's okay to repeat these things. But developmental approach really means waiting for the signals for the child. And I hear it all the time from parents. Well, my 4-year-old likes to do worksheets because his older siblings are. Well, he probably does. He may not know what learning really is, but he sees his siblings and he wants to model what they're doing because it looks like fun. So developmental means working with a child's age, their cognitive, their maturity level. Whatever happened to late bloomers? We have so many terms now in the educational world, making my head hurt. I'm like, what happened to late bloomers? That means waiting on them and seeing where they're at. And sometimes that means getting to different grade levels of curriculum and working down on one and then working up on one. I've done that too for many years. I've worked between two different levels. So that's a much better way. Now that way is a little bit harder. And I know when you start homeschooling, you want to just pick out some curriculum, but unless you start working with your child, tutoring one-to-one, you won't know these things. You have to actually sit down with them and you have to work with them and you have to give them your time. But you can see where they're at. Are they struggling with writing in the 5th or 6th grade? Did they not have enough of that practice in the lower grades to have it kind of mastered by 4th grade? You see, some of these things you want to be empowered with on the developmental approach of a child. It's a much better way to pick out the subjects and the information, the skills, and the content that he or she can be on. Now, here's the last way that I'm going to throw out to you to see about the subjects. And of course, that's your local school. Every homeschooler does it. I did it. But when I mean look at your standards, what I also did as a guide to see what children my age were learning, not so much that I wanted to keep up with public school because I didn't. My standards were much higher and my kids always tested higher. There's a lot of kids. No, my kids aren't like brainiacs. I had one that was identified as gifted, but I really just felt like I just spent a lot of time with him. I gave him one-to-one. All of my sons, I gave him one-to-one time. And so when you have the one-to-one time, those odds in homeschooling are huge. They do better because they get that attention. So the point I'm making is that I would look at some of the standards because my standards are higher, and I would see the release tests that they would have. And I would use that sometimes as a framework. Oh, I want to hit this subject maybe here, or this subject in this next grade. I didn't want to really keep up with them. Like I said, they were having us do the capitals in 3rd or 4th grade. We wanted to do ancient history. We wanted to do different subjects in science that my kids were interested in. They weren't interested in the ones that they had mentioned. We did other subjects. And the point to remember too, when you're teaching your children these subjects, you're not going to cover everything. We're going to miss something. I'm sorry, but it's part of it because there's so much to learn. None of us know everything. So what you're trying to do is to feed your child's love for learning so that they want to continue learning lifelong. It's not just till high school, till they're a senior. It's when they're out on their own and they're young adults and they talk to you and you're listening to them and you listen to how they arrived at making a decision. And it reminds you so much of how you taught them when they were real little and sitting on your lap. And the way they made a decision is by research, by taking learning by the reins, so to speak, diving right in. This is what you need to do when it comes to homeschooling. There's just a very loose framework of subjects that have to be taught in a certain order. That's why school has scope and sequence. The scope meaning what we're going to cover, and the sequence, the order that we're going to do it in. I have some of those on my website too, if you want to look those over. And I'm also going to post some links for you to help you with the subjects, because for developmental wise that I found in my experience, because sometimes, we want our kids to write in kindergarten, they're not ready to write. So when do they write? How many paragraphs should they be writing? By what age or what grade? And this isn't to put kids in a box, but for goodness sakes, I always say we need some kind of rule, and I roll with the details, and I want to know, and I want you to know. So I'm going to put those links down here in the bottom. But the third point I was making was that just remember, even in the standards, that if you check your local public school to see what they're teaching, even in the same city, different schools are teaching topics, different subjects at different grades at different times of the year. So just use it as a guide, as a rule of thumb to get you started. But the best tip is the skill subjects and the content subjects. Do you see how that kind of lightens your load? If you'll just focus on math and the parts of language arts, in another video, I'll share the components of language arts because I don't like just saying language arts. What are all the elements of language arts? I want you to know. That way you can make the right choice because, should we teach grammar in first grade, teach grammar in fifth grade? We want to be in the know about that too. And I'll drop some links for you on that here at the bottom when I'm done. Okay, that's it. Just those short points. I could talk a lot more, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So the 3 points, content versus skill subjects. Look for the developmental approach of your child. I don't care what everybody else is doing in 3rd or 5th grade. Your child, where are they at along the learning spectrum? Also, state standards for your local public school. It's a great way just to look at a framework. You can look at it, you cannot look at it, but just remember, usually always our standards are better. Okay, thank you. See you next time.